This video is about using ordered pairs to complete rate tables. In an earlier video, we were looking at how to complete rate tables using scale and the unit rate. So this one is a little different because in this one we're starting with a graph and then we're using that to complete the table. All right, so the first problem says Gloria earns $5 per hour babysitting her younger brother. Use the graph below to complete the rate table. All right. So because this is a graph, we can think of it in the coordinate system, right? So this horizontal line here at the bottom is our x-axis, and then this vertical line here we can think of as the y-axis. And what we want to do is look at the graph and figure out what is the ordered pair that goes with each of these points. And then we can use those ordered pairs to complete the graph down here. All right, so if I look at the graph, I can see down here I have the number of hours. So the number of hours she babysits, if she babysits for 1 hour, and then she's going to earn, if you draw it over here, it's not exactly there, but you can see it's between 4 and 6. She's going to earn $5, all right? So the number of hours, that's our x. So I'm going to put x for the x coordinate. I'm going to put 1 for the x coordinate. And then over here, she earns $5. That's our y coordinate. Okay, remember these are called ordered pairs because they have to be in a certain order. X comes first, Y comes second. So using my X coordinate, 1, and then that goes with my Y coordinate, 5. So 1 and 5. All right, if I continue, then when I get to the next point, I can see the X coordinate is now 2, and then the Y coordinate is 10. And if I continue along the x-axis, remember I always go left or right first, so that would be 3. And then I go up 2, and I can see that this is between 14 and 16, so that would be 15. All right, so once again, ordered pairs, it's important to keep everything kind of in the right spot. So I'm going to use a highlighter to sort of help us keep track of that. Notice down here our number of hours was the x-axis, so we put x over here. We had 1, 2, and 3. So we want to make sure when we fill in our rate table that all of this is in the right place. So we want to make sure our number of hours, our x coordinates go with the number of hours in our ratio table. All right, so if we look at the two things listed here, number of hours is first. That means my x coordinates are going to come first. So I'm going to put my x values here. And I know my x values are 1, 2, and 3. All right, and then my y values, my y coordinates came from this axis, money earned, so right here, and I put my y values in my ordered pair over here, so I had 5, 10, and 15. And again, I just want to make sure the money earned here and these numbers here all go in the right place in my rate table. So I can see that money earned is the second part of my table. And so that's where I'm going to put my y values. All right, so when x was 1, y was 5. And when x was 2, y was 10. And when x is 3, y was 15. Right? So if I want to continue the table, how about we try, let's say 5 and 10. Right? I can use scaling in order to predict what those numbers would be. I can do that using 1. 1's an easy number to multiply by. So if I multiply 1 times 5, I get 5. So I'm going to do the same thing on bottom. I'm going to multiply 5 times 5, and that gives me 25. All right? If I need to get from 1 to 10, I would multiply times 10. So I would do the same thing on the bottom here. Multiply 5 times 10, and that would give me 50. So if she works 10 hours, then she earns $50. All right, let's look at a second example. In this one, Bethany can read 2 books every 6 days. Use the graph below to complete the rate table. All right, so she can read 2 books, that's right here, every 6 days. So if I go up, I can see that this graph is matching what was given to me in my problem. All right, so now the next thing I want to do before I complete my ratios table is to pull these points off of the graph and make them into ordered pairs. So again, where's my x-axis? It's down here, it's this horizontal line. I'm going to go ahead and label it as x, and this vertical line right here going up and down is considered my y-axis. Over here, I want to make sure I get my order right. I'm going to list the x values first and then the y values. All right, so the number of books when for one book here, one book would be x. I would go up to my y value, and I can see it's between 2 and 4, so that would be 3. Right? For the next one, and then when the x value is 2, I go up and look across. This would be 6 for y. So again, I'm starting at 0. Remember, that's called the origin. I go over to 3, and then I go up to this number here. You can see that's between 8 and 10, so that would be 9. All right, so again, I want to make sure my x value and my what was listed on my graph also match what's in my table. So I'm just going to highlight just to make that really obvious. The number of books was my x coordinate here, my x axis here, and I used 1, 2, and 3 as those values. So on my table, number of books would be at the top here. All right, for my y values on the graph, this was labeled as the number of days. My y coordinates were 3, 6, and 9. And on my table, I want to make sure my number of days get the same numbers. So the number of books were 1, 2, and 3. And the number of days were 3. For 1, it was 3 days. For 2, it was 6 days. And for 3, it was 9 days. Right? So again, I can use these rates to predict other amounts. And so let's just try 4, 6, and 9. All right, so these points weren't on my table, but now that I have a set of values, I can use those numbers to complete other ratios. All right, so starting from 1, that's your unit rate here, I can use that to figure out 4, 6, and 9. So I know that when I multiply 1 times 4, I get 4. That means I want to do the same thing times 3. So 3 times 4 is 12. All right, if I do it for 6, I'm multiplying 1 times 6 to get 6. So I want to do the same thing on bottom. 3 times 6 is what? 18. And if I continue this, 1 times 9 gives me 9. And 3 times 9 would be what number? 27. All right, so now I've completed my table. So just kind of to sum this up again, I'm using ordered pairs from a graph. So first thing I do is I look at the graph, I find the x and y values, and I use those to make an ordered pair. Then after I have a set of ordered pairs, I can use those to complete the table. All right, see you soon. So this video is going to be about completing tables and then using those tables to make a graph. So let's take a look. Here we have our first problem. The ratio of salamanders to frogs is 2 to 6. Complete the ratio table and then graph it. Right? So they've already kind of set up a ratio table for us. They put salamanders first, frogs underneath that. And you can see that the ratio they gave us was 2 to 6. All right? So, and you can see the 2 coordinates with the salamanders, the 6 coordinates with the frogs, right? They're just in the same order. And so then they've given me a list of other numbers they want me to graph. All right, so before I can do that, I have to figure out what their values, the values of the frogs would be. I have the values of the salamanders. All right, so let's look. How did they get from 2 to 1? Okay, well, one way to get from 2 to 1 is to divide by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. That means on bottom here, I also need to divide by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. All right, and then because this is the value for 1, I can use that as my unit rate to get to the rest of these values. All right, so to go from 1 to 3, I'm multiplying by 3. So I do the same thing down here, times 3. 3 times 3 is 9. All right, and then to get to 7, I'm going to go back to 1. 1 times 7 is 7. So 3 times 7 is 21. I go back to 1. 1 times 8 is 8. So 3 times 8 is 24. For 9, I go back to 1. 1 times 9 is 9. So 3 times 9 is 27. And then for this last one, 1 times 12 is 12. So 3 times 12 is 36. All right, so I'm going to use these values now in order to come up with a list of ordered pairs. All right, so I'm going to let salamanders, if I look at my graph down here, I know that the x-axis is my horizontal line down here, and the y-axis is my vertical line right here, right? And I just want to make sure I have the right x and the right y. So salamanders is going to be my x, and frogs are going to be my y. All right, so when I make my ordered pairs, then I'm going to list the x first and then the y. That's why it's called an ordered pair. So for salamanders, the first ordered pair would be 2, 6. The second ordered pair would be 1, 3. The third one would be 3, 9, 7, 21, 8, 24, 9, then 27, and the last one is 12, 36. All right, so I have a list of ordered pairs here. Now I want to take my ordered pairs and put them onto my graph. So I always start from the origin, that's 0, and I go over, right? I go to the left or right. Some people say I have to walk to the elevator before I take it up or down. Okay, so I'm going to walk over to 2, and then I'm going to go up to 6, and that's where I'm going to place my point. Then I'm going to do 1, 3. So I'm going to go over to 1 and then up to 3. Well, here they're not labeled individually, so I have to sort of guess where 3 would be. So I have 0 and 6 here, so 3 is going to be halfway in between there. 3, 9, so I'm going to go over to 3 and then up to 9. And again, looks like these are going up by 3, so 6 plus 3 is 9, so 9 would be right there. Then 7, 21, I can go over to 7 and up to 21. So 21 is going to be between 18 and 24. 8, 24, I go over to 8 and then up to 24. For 9, 27, I go from 0 over to 9, then up to 27, which has to be between 24 and 30. And my last ordered pair is 12, 36. So starting at 0, I go over to 12 and up to 36. One thing that's really kind of great about ratios is because these are all equivalent ratios, then what you should get here is a straight line. So you can see the points on the graph that we put there from our ordered pairs. If I connected all these points, they would be forming a straight line, and they should form a straight line because this relationship is said to be linear. It forms a line. If you get a set of points that aren't linear, then that probably means you made a mistake up here when you were filling out your ratio table, or you maybe perhaps mixed up your x and y when you were graphing. So it's a good way to check yourself. You should get a straight line. Some of you are going to learn, or if you don't learn it this year, you'll learn next year that because it not only forms a line, but it's also, if I extended this line, it would go through 0. And it's also said to be a proportional relationship, which we're going to talk about proportions in this chapter too. But that's just kind of a preview. All right, number 2. Mitch's car can drive 30 miles for every 1 gallon of gas it holds. Complete a rate table to show how far Mitch can drive on 2, 3, 4, and 5 gallons. Write the ordered pairs and then graph them. All right, so I have a ratio table here. I need to pull this time from my problem the ratio to use here. So it says Mitch can drive 30 miles for every 1 gallon. So that sounds like a ratio to me. I can see that there are, for every 1 gallon, I need to fill in how many miles? 30. All right, and then I have a set of values here to complete using this ratio right here. All right, so to get from 1 to 2, I multiply by 2. So I want to do the same thing down here. I'm going to multiply by 2. 30 times 2 is 60. And then I'm going to go back to 1 and try to get to 3. So to go from 1 to 3, I multiply by 3. 30 times 3 is 90. 1 times 4 is 4. So 30 times 4 is 120. Okay, and I'm doing this in my head, but let's pretend you don't know what that means. Then over to the side here, if you didn't know what that was, you would be doing 30 times 4. That's 0. 4 times 3 is 12. That's 120. Okay, 1 times 5 is 5. 30 times 5 is 150. And here's how I'm doing it in my head. What is 5 times 3? 15. And then I add the 0. Okay, 1 times 10 is 10. 30 times 10 is 300. Again, if you don't know that, you're multiplying. So 0, 0, start with the 0. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 3, and I add. Okay? 1 times 20 is 20, so 30 times 20, if you don't know that, multiply it. 0, 0, start with the 0. 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 3 is 6, and then add. So 600. Once I have a completed rate table, I'm going to go ahead and write that as a set of ordered pairs. Again, I want to make sure my x and y, I'm using the right values for x and y. So I'm going to take a look at my graph first. I can see down here that the number of gallons is x, is along the x-axis. So up here, number of gallons was first. It was listed first. So x is going to be with the number of gallons. And then my y-axis is the number of miles. Y is the number of miles. So I want to make sure that I list my ordered pair. When I list my ordered pairs, that y is second. Or I use these values second. Okay, so x and y, I've figured out what those are on my table. I know what they are on my graph. I'm ready to make my points. All right, so x is 1 and y is 30. So my first ordered pair is 130. When x is 2, y is 60, 3, and 90, 4, 120, 5, 150, 10, 300, 20, 600. Okay, so once I have a set of ordered pairs, I'm going to put them on the graph. Now, my graph doesn't go all the way out to 20, so I'm just going to do the first 5 here. So 130, I'm going to go start from the origin from 0. I'm going to go over to 1 and then up to 30. All right, so again, 20. These are going up by 10. I didn't list every number, but you know that 20, 30, 40 is how it would go. So I'm going to go over to 1, up to 30, and put my dot here. 260. So I go over to 2, up to 60. Over to 3, up to 90, would be between 80 and 100. 4, 120, so over to 4, up to 120 would be right there. And then 5, 150, so I'm going to go over to 5, up to, oops, ran out of room. So that would be 130, 140, so like about right there for 150. Again, if I want to double check that I have correct values, I want to make sure that these are forming a straight line, and they would be forming a straight line. So it looks like I used the correct equivalent ratios. And then just as a preview, because this line is passing through the origin, then these values are also said to be proportional, which we'll talk more about later. All right, so what did we do? We completed a table using scaling, or using our unit rate to get to the next number. And then we took those values from the ratio table and created ordered pairs. Make sure you get your x and your y to match up with your x and y on your graph. And then we use those ordered pairs in order to plot points on the graph. All right, see you soon.